You can't just take a whole wandering family into your life. Well, looks like I already did. Wyoming, 1879. The setting sun spilled across the dusty square, pale and fading like the last page of a worn-out book. A man in a weathered leather duster, hat pulled low, reined in his horse before a crumbling saloon. His name carried both fear and memory in these parts. Cole Whitaker. Behind him, 3 orphans clung together, wide-eyed, at a town that had no place for them. And in the doorway stood a widow, strong, unyielding, Evelyn Hart, a lone landmark daring to defy the storm rolling in. No one spoke. The wind rattled chains against the door. But across the square, riders gathered. A line of federal deputies with silver bands flashing on their arms, steel hard as a wall. At their head was Deputy Marshal Silas Rusk. His face was carved from stone, his voice sharp as a blade. "Mrs. Hart," he called out, "you stand accused of defying an eviction order. You know the law." Evelyn lifted her chin, black eyes burning. "I know what's right." Cole stepped forward, laying a steady hand on the shoulder of the eldest girl, a silent promise. His voice was deep, clipped, steady. "Right and wrong don't match the rusted badge you pinned to your chest. She's coming with me." Silence stretched, taut as a drawn bowstring. In the corner, the blacksmith froze, hammer hanging midair. Then came the pounding hooves of Sheriff Crow, leading the county men to stand beside the federal marshals. Federal law, county law, 2 branches of power, united today against one widow and a drifter. Rusk smirked. "And what's your plan, Whitaker? Take in 3 children who ain't your blood, and a widow the whole town cast out? You fixing to build yourself an orphan camp out on the frontier?" Cole tilted his head, voice low and certain. "No, I'm fixing to build a home. Rarer than gold out here." In that instant, Evelyn looked at him, not as the outcast widow she had been branded, but with the eyes of someone who had found hope where she least expected it. The crowd murmured, tension thick in the air. And then, from the far end of the street, a supply wagon rolled in, stacked high with weapons, its iron wheels clattering like a war drum. A warning that this fight wouldn't end with words alone. The town square lay heavy with silence. The steady stomp of federal boots echoed like a funeral drum. Cole Whitaker adjusted the brim of his hat, his eyes sweeping the crowd gathered on either side. Familiar faces, some curious, some afraid, and some wearing the smug satisfaction of watching neighbors crushed under the weight of so-called law. "We ride," Cole said softly, but his voice carried like a command. Evelyn Hart swallowed hard, pulling her eldest girl close. The 3 children, barefoot and trembling, clung to her skirts. None of them knew that the next step might drag them all into a storm of blood and steel. Silas Rusk raised a hand, signaling his men. "No one leaves this square without my word," he barked, the sound striking like a hammer blow. Cole gave no reply. Slowly, he turned, tightening the reins. His gray eyes swept across the rifles pointed at him. No fear there. Only the cold resolve of a man who had crossed the line between life and death too many times to count. "You've got 2 choices," he said, voice low and steady. "1, let us walk out of here, and this ends quiet. Or 2, try and stop us, and this dirt will drink blood before the sun sets." The air was drawn tight. So tight even a breath sounded like steel sliding from its sheath. The youngest boy whispered, voice shaking, "Mr. Cole, are they gonna shoot?" Cole leaned down, rough hand resting on the child's tangled hair. "Not while I'm still breathing." Then came the iron rattle of wheels grinding against stone. The supply wagon rolled into the square, soldiers climbing down, the kind of men who only knew how to bend others with violence. Eve hissed under her breath, eyes flicking to Cole. "What do we do now?" Cole's smile was thin, cold as a knife in the dark. "Run." One word. Then his heels struck his horse. The animal screamed, rearing high as dust exploded into the twilight. Evelyn pulled the children tight, lifting the eldest girl onto the saddle behind her. Gunfire cracked, sparks tore through the square. Civilians scattered, ducking into porches as chaos erupted. Cole drew his revolver and fired back. A shot struck the wagon's wheel, sending it careening sideways. "Stay on my line!" he shouted. Eve bent low, clutching the children as their horses barreled through smoke and flame. Pandemonium consumed the square. Silas Rusk roared orders, his men surging after them. But Cole had danced this dance before. He cut hard through a narrow alley behind the blacksmith's forge, leading them down the rough dirt path beyond. The pounding of hooves thundered behind them, closer with every heartbeat. Cole glanced back and saw Evelyn's eyes. Fear shimmered there, but so did something else. Resolve. And in that moment, he knew. There was no turning back. The northern pine woods opened before them, the only road to escape. Cole spurred his horse ahead, hooves pounding the damp earth, pine needles falling like a shroud to cover their tracks. Evelyn clutched the children tight, her heart hammering, breath ragged and choked with dust and the sting of gunpowder. Behind them, the cries of soldiers and riders echoed through the trees, wolves on the hunt, scenting blood. A bullet ripped past, splintering a trunk by Cole's ear, hot shards of wood stinging his face. "Faster!" he barked, eyes locked on the narrow path ahead. The riders thundered through the bend, swallowed by twisting shadows. The thick canopy dimmed the dying light, the forest itself a trap waiting to snatch the slow. The eldest child turned, voice shaking. "Will we make it?" Cole didn't look back. His answer came harsh, certain. "As long as we ride, we've got hope." They burst out of the tree line. The prairie spread wide before them, a sea of wild grass swept by the wind, the sky painted in streaks of red and gold. Breathtaking, but merciless. Out here, there was no cover, no trees, no shadows to hide in, only open ground, and the hunters closing in. Cole yanked his horse to a halt on a low ridge, scanning the horizon. Dust rose in the distance, another column moving fast, not just soldiers, cavalry cutting off the escape. His jaw tightened, hand tightening around the worn grip of his gun. Evelyn followed his gaze, her face pale. They're closing from both sides. Cole turned, gray eyes flashing with resolve. Then there's only one way left, cross that dry riverbed before they close the noose. The wind roared harder, carrying the thunder of pursuit closer, closer. Evelyn held the children close, whispering prayers against the dusk. Cole gave her one last look, a silent vow, and then drove his horse down the slope. And in that instant, a horn blasted from the forest behind them. The soldiers had spotted their trail. Cavalry shadows rose against the crimson horizon, rifles glinting in the last light. The chase was far from over. The dry riverbed stretched across the prairie like a scar, its white stones blazing under the dying sun. Cole drove his horse down first, hooves pounding through the dust. Evelyn and the children clinging tight as they followed. Behind them, the drum of pursuit grew louder, each heartbeat falling in rhythm with the thunder of hooves. But before they could cross, shadows rose on the far bank. 5 cavalry riders, rifles gleaming. Gunfire erupted, sparks flashing from the rock face. Cole yanked his reins, wheeling his horse sideways. "Down!" he shouted. Bullets tore the sand beside them, choking dust into the air. Cole fired back, 2 quick shots cracking through the chaos. One soldier toppled from the saddle, his screams splitting the wind. The others charged, sabers flashing, rifles raised. Evelyn clutched the children, tears burning in her eyes, but her jaw set. If this was the end, she would not bow in fear. Cole spurred forward, his revolver spinning in his hand. At point-blank range, his shot struck true, sending an enemy horse rearing, its rider thrown violently into the dirt. But victory was fleeting. A bullet seared his shoulder, blood soaking through his coat. He gritted his teeth, one thought steady in his mind. Make a path for Evelyn and the children. Gunfire, screams, pounding hooves, it all collided in a storm. A rider broke through, bearing down on Evelyn. Cole shouted, But before he could fire, the eldest child swung a jagged branch with desperate force. The attacker's horse stumbled, throwing the rider off balance. Cole's final bullet slammed home, ending the threat in a thunderclap of smoke. For a heartbeat, silence fell. Only ragged breaths, the panicked whinny of horses. 3 mounts down. 2 soldiers lay still in the dust. But then Cole lifted his gaze, and his heart sank. On the far edge of the prairie, beyond the haze of dust, more riders emerged. Dozens of them. A force 4 times larger than the one they had just faced. Cole wiped blood from his arm, eyes hardening like steel. "That fight," he muttered. That was only the test. The group broke into a sparse forest, the moonlight fractured into shards by scattered branches. But shadows could not mask the thunder of pursuit closing behind them. Cole rode at the front, his breath heavy, blood still seeping from his shoulder. He knew the cavalry would not relent. They were tightening the noose, driving them into a killing ground. Then the horn blared. From both flanks, riders poured out like wolves descending on prey. Rifles cracked, muzzle flashes slicing the dark. "Down! Hold the children!" Cole barked. Evelyn dragged the 2 youngest to a tree trunk, shielding them with her own body. The eldest trembled but still clutched the rough branch he'd carried since town, fear and fury warring in his wide eyes. Cole fired back, every shot like thunder rolling through the night. 1 soldier toppled, another pitched backward off his horse. But the swarm kept coming. A saber slashed across Cole's arm, tearing flesh. He gritted his teeth, hot blood streaming down, yet his eyes burned with unshaken resolve. A bullet smashed into the tree above Evelyn's head, splinters cutting her cheek. She gasped, but did not flinch, her arms locked around the children, her gaze blazing with a mother's defiance. Cole saw her, and his heart tightened. His grip on the trigger turned to iron. No one would touch them while he still drew breath. A soldier reeled with a scream. The eldest child had hurled a rock straight into his chest, staggering him long enough for Cole to put him down with a shot. But another cavalryman surged close, revolver aimed square at Cole's head. The world froze. Evelyn screamed. The children wailed. Cole stared into the black maw of the barrel, his empty revolver clenched, chest rising and falling in grim defiance. And then, out of the darkness, a rifle cracked. The officer fell lifeless from the saddle, smoke curling from the wound. Cole snapped his head toward the tree line. There, half shrouded in shadow, stood a figure. A stranger, rifle still smoking. The thunder of hooves faded into the distance. What remained was a suffocating silence, broken only by Evelyn's ragged breathing and the frantic heartbeat of the children pressed against her skirts. Cole staggered, blood seeping from his shoulder and arm, but his eyes stayed fixed on the shadowed figure who had just saved his life. From the tree line stepped a tall, gaunt man. His long, weathered coat flapped in the night breeze, and smoke still curled from the muzzle of his rifle. His face was drawn and hollow, but his eyes burned with a sharp, restless fire. He stopped, letting a faint smile play across his lips, half friendly, half unreadable. "Looks like you've found yourselves in a heap of trouble," he said, his voice low and gravelly, tinged with dry humor. Cole lifted his revolver, the cylinder long emptied, but his grip was steady as stone. Evelyn clutched the children tighter, her pulse hammering in her throat, eyes locked on the stranger. "Who are you?" Cole demanded. The man didn't answer right away. He removed his hat, revealing hair streaked with gray, his features carved deep by years of hardship. "Name's Travis Hale. Used to be a scout for the Union Army. These days, just another drifter." Suspicion clouded Evelyn's gaze. "Why did you help us?" Travis gave a small shrug, his smile twisting. "Never liked the sight of women and children being gunned down. Simple as that." But his eyes slid toward Cole. "The soldiers won't forget tonight. They'll hunt you harder now. And since I pulled the trigger, they'll be hunting me too." Cole studied him in silence. In war, he'd seen every kind of man. Loyal friends, treacherous deserters, liars who thrived in shadows. Which one was Travis? The children saw differently. The eldest crept forward, whispering to Evelyn, "Mama, he saved us." Evelyn squeezed her child's hand, her gaze softening for a moment, though caution still flickered in her eyes. Travis planted his rifle in the dirt, dropped heavily against a tree, and exhaled. "Believe me or don't, but if you want to live through the night, you'd best follow me. There's a trail out of here no patrol dares to take." Cole's brow furrowed. Every instinct screamed that he was being forced into a corner. Trust a stranger, or wait for the cavalry to return with twice the numbers. The wind moaned through the pines. Evelyn turned to Cole, her dark eyes shining with the question that bound them all. Was this man a savior, or a danger far greater than the army at their heels? Travis walked ahead with steady steps, sure of his footing even in the thick night. He didn't glance back, but his presence filled the silence between each broken branch and crunch of stone. Behind him, Cole supported Evelyn, guiding the children along the narrow, choking path. The forest seemed to close in around them, trees whispering overhead, every snapped twig echoing like the crack of a rifle. The trail was almost invisible, swallowed by weeds and jagged rock. Travis murmured over his shoulder, "Used to be a scout's trail in the war. Cavalry never liked these paths. Too easy for an ambush." Cole gave no reply. His eyes never left Travis's back. He trusted no man who appeared at the exact moment of death. The instincts of a soldier told him one thing: this stranger knew far more than he was saying. At last, the group reached a narrow ravine. Cliffs rose sheer on both sides, and at its base yawned a shallow cave, damp and shadowed, but safe enough for the night. Evelyn let out a weary breath and sat the children down, her hands trembling as she tore a strip of cloth to bind Cole's bleeding shoulder. Gratitude flickered in her eyes, mingled with fear. Travis struck a spark, coaxing a small fire to life. The flames painted his gaunt features in flickering orange, hollow eyes glinting with something unreadable. After a long silence, he spoke. "You know why they're chasing you so damn hard? It isn't just about her." Evelyn stiffened. "What do you mean?" Travis leaned forward, staring directly at Cole. "Word gets around. A man like you, ex-soldier who walked away without reporting. To the army, that makes you a deserter. And out here, desertion is as good an excuse for hanging as murder." The cave seemed to freeze. Evelyn turned slowly to Cole, shock in her eyes. She had never heard this part of his past. The children stared too, fear spreading across their faces. Cole's fist clenched. Firelight flickered in his gray eyes, anger, grief, defiance all at once. "I left because war took everything. My wife died of fever in the camps. There was nothing left worth fighting for. But they called it betrayal." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Evelyn lowered her gaze, fingers knotting the fabric of her skirt. Travis's smile was faint, not mocking but weary, as though he'd seen too many men broken by causes not their own. "Then you understand. They're not just after her, Whitaker. They're after you." From outside, faint hoofbeats whispered across the prairie. The cavalry was still out there, circling like wolves. Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at Evelyn, then at the frightened children huddled near the fire. In his eyes burned a question that no one dared ask aloud. How could he protect them, when his own past was already a noose tightening around his neck? Before dawn had properly broken, hoofbeats rolled through the ravine. The sound bounced off the rock walls, heavy, relentless like war drums. Cole sprang to his feet, hand closing around the reloaded revolver despite the bandage on his shoulder still seeping blood. Evelyn dragged the children farther into the cave, eyes wide with panic and a fierce, immovable resolve. Travis peered out through the slit of rock and frowned. "They found us. No time to waste." Cole ground his teeth. "Then stall them here. This gap is narrow, numbers won't save them." The soldiers' voices thundered back. "Surrender the deserter and that woman, or you'll all be killed." Their arrogance filled the chasm like cold wind. Cole half-stepped from the mouth of the cave, his shadow a long, hard silhouette on the stone. "You don't have the right to hang anyone here," he said. Low, hoarse, but as steady as a fired shot. In that moment, Evelyn felt it. Whatever brokenness lived in him, he still wore the backbone of a soldier. The first bullet cracked. It slammed into the rock beside Cole's cheek. Travis answered with a rifle's report, and a rider went down. Cole lunged into position, hurling up stacked boulders as makeshift breastworks and firing in short, brutal bursts that pushed their attackers back to the flanks. Smoke and screams and the frantic neighing of horses turned the ravine into a chaotic howl. Evelyn covered the children's ears, tears streaking down her face, yet she whispered steady words. "Quiet now. We'll get through this." A stray round ripped the air and nearly hit the eldest boy. Evelyn screamed and clutched him to her, and something in Cole snapped. Fear flared into feral wrath. He roared and let drive a killing shot that felled the man who had fired. The firefight stretched taut, each second a wire ready to snap. Then, from the far ridge, another horn answered, the deeper, heavier blast of a regular troop. Travis went pale. He turned to Cole. "Not just cavalry. The regulars are coming. If we stay, we'll be crushed." Cole stole a look at Evelyn and the children. His breath came hard. In his eyes was the terrible, simple question of survival. Hold the line and die here, or fight through the cordon and run, for their lives, for a chance at anything like freedom. The horn's dirge drew closer, mingling with the thunder of hooves. The ground shook beneath them, as if the mountain itself were growling. Evelyn clutched the two children tight, her eyes wide with terror. Travis hissed, "If we stay, they'll crush us flat. We've got to pull out, through the northern pass, before the regulars close in." Cole's grip tightened on his revolver, his eyes burning in the pale wash of dawn. "Run, and they'll hunt us to the ends of the plains. But if we hold them here, at least you might have a chance." "Don't you dare!" Evelyn cut him off, voice breaking. "You're not carrying this alone. I've already buried a husband. I won't let my children lose the only shield they have left. If you fall, what becomes of us?" In that instant, Cole met her gaze, tear-streaked yet blazing with defiance, and he saw reflected what he had lost long ago. A family, a place to call home. His hand trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of knowing he had something worth surviving for. With a growl, he wrenched Travis's rifle from his hands. "We're not running like hunted animals. We'll fight as we move. Drive them north, only there do we stand a chance." The children looked up at him, eyes wide with terror and trust. One whispered, "You won't leave us, will you?" Cole crouched, resting a scarred hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice was low, rough, unshakable. "Never." Outside, the first silhouettes of soldiers crested the ridge, cavalry ranks tightening like a noose. Cole pulled the trigger, the shot cracking like thunder, and the retreat exploded into motion. Gunsmoke rolled through the damp morning air, mingling with shouts and war cries. Evelyn gathered the children, racing after Travis, while Cole stood his ground at the rear, each bullet from his hand carving a bloody path through the mist. Arrows, lead, hooves, screams. The cacophony rose into a savage hymn of survival. Cole knew this was only the beginning. Ahead lay the fate of a widow and 3 orphans, tied now inseparably to his own. The dawn flared over the ravine, but its light cast more questions than answers. Were they breaking free, or only galloping headlong into a trap even deadlier than the one they'd just escaped? The gun smoke thinned, leaving behind only the acrid stench of powder and the fading echo of hooves in the distance. Along the narrow trail out of the canyon, a small, battered group pressed on. A man who had already lost everything, a widow marked by grief, and orphans who had never known the gentleness of a safe childhood. Cole walked last, his shoulders bleeding, revolver heavy in his grip. Each step carved a silent oath into the earth. As long as he drew breath, no one would lay a hand on them. Evelyn glanced back, and for a fleeting heartbeat their eyes met. Within his gaze lay not only pain, but the fragile spark of hope. Ahead, the prairie stretched wide, dawn spilling gold across withered grass. But what waited beyond that light? Freedom, or another trap tightening its noose? This is not the end. This is only the beginning of a harsher journey, where outlaws, soldiers, and the merciless laws of the frontier still lurk, waiting for their reckoning. Question for you. My audience, if it were you, Caught between fragile freedom and danger closing in? What would you choose? Keep running, or turn and face it all in one final stand? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear your answer. And if you'd like to keep riding along with these wild, tragic, yet hopeful tales of the American West, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because this journey has only just begun.